Hi, Dr. Gila here. I got a really sweet email recently thanking me for my free guide about tantrums and meltdowns. This mom wrote to thank me for the guide because it helped her start to better understand what was going on. If you don't have the guide yet, go to parentingwithconnection.com/guide, and I'll also put the link in the show notes here. The guide goes through my acronym for the 7 main categories of things that can really be underneath contributing to these tough episodes. And so I asked this mom if one of them stood out in terms of what is going on right now with one of her kids. And she said it is currently a thought. And the thought is, my mom loves my brothers more than me. A tale as old as time when your child feels that you love another child more than them, or maybe it's another thought that they're having and it's hard to hear. It's hard for them to feel, and it's hard to know how to support them through this and how to keep this from becoming a really deeply ingrained belief. So I thought I'd use this opportunity to talk about how to navigate this kind of situation. And a lot of the principles here will apply for other situations also. So I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions that you want me to answer on the podcast or in an email, please let me know. My email is hello@drgilaparenting.com, and it is listed at the bottom of the show notes of every episode. Welcome to Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, the podcast that honors your messy reality. It's the support you crave without the usual emotional landmines. I'm your host, Dr. Gila, and I promise I will never tell you to just tag your partner in. Before we start, quick reminder. While I am a licensed psychologist and a certified coach, this podcast is not coaching and it's not therapy, and it's not a replacement for medical or psychological advice. It is for educational and informational purposes only. All right, let's dive in. When I'm working with clients and also in my own parenting, I have found that most situations benefit from looking at them in terms of 3 pieces. One is the parent piece, one is the child piece, and one is the relationship between parent and child. And this situation is no different. So let's use those 3 pieces to talk through this particular situation. And again, I think there's going to be some sort of general common themes that you can use to apply to other thoughts that your child might be having and other situations as well. For this one, I want to start with the child piece. So, this is really understanding what is going on for the child. A couple decades ago at this point, I found some of my old diaries, my old journals, including my very first one. I think I was 6 years old, and that is when my second younger brother was born. So, I'm the oldest of 3. And the whole diary, you could just hear the pout. There are so many entries that say, "Dear diary, my parents love my brothers more than me." And the pout is just like screaming off the page. I also, as a side note, there was one that said, "My father won't let me eat corn on the cob just because I have a loose tooth." And you could just hear the pout. So anyway, I just share this because I think it is so incredibly common for kids to feel this way, especially when they have younger siblings, especially when there's a new baby in the house. I did ask this mom as a follow-up question if the siblings were younger, and not surprising at all, the girl does have 2 younger siblings, including 1 new baby. So this is very, very, very common. But not only is it common, it also makes sense. That phrase is one of my favorite phrases because when we talk about validating a child's feelings, it can feel like what we're saying is we need to say that they're right in feeling that. And really, what we're saying is it makes sense. I understand why you might be feeling that way. And the first step is genuinely understanding it, because if you're saying, "I understand why you feel that way," but you don't really, then that comes off as inauthentic, and you're not really going to be able to validate in an authentic and satisfying way. And so, really taking a moment to think about what is happening for your child. Of course, it makes sense. They used to be, if they're the oldest child, especially, they used to be the only child in the family. And now the baby is probably with mom or dad or whoever is caring for them with the grown-ups is getting a lot more physical connection and one-on-one attention and time. And this baby has sort of taken the older child's life and thrown it in a blender. I mean, the baby didn't, but the new situation of having a new younger sibling has taken the older child's life and to some extent metaphorically threw it in a blender, and everything is different. And change and transition can be so hard. And it makes sense that it feels scary, probably, right? Because this is new. The child doesn't really know what this means, and they're adjusting to the new reality. So there's probably a lot of fears there. There is certainly going to be some feelings about seeing another human, another being having the same special connection that you have with your parents. Now you have this other baby who has that same special connection. And of course, there's going to be some envy and again, fears and jealousy and a lot of feelings about it, some sadness, right? And so I think it is important, even though it might be obvious, right? Of course, it makes sense that they feel this way, but to really take the time to put yourself in your child's shoes and really think about, okay, this makes so much sense that they feel this way. And this is also, I want to say, the way that they are expressing that feeling, the way they are articulating that feeling. And there's probably a whole lot of other feelings and thoughts that go with it that they maybe can't articulate yet, or maybe even aren't aware of. But it makes sense that they are having feelings and that they are struggling. And that allows you to do two things. The first is now we're going to talk about the parent piece, because whether this makes sense to you or not, it's of course going to be hard to hear and see your child hurting, to hear and see your child saying that they don't feel like you love them. You are probably working your butt off to try to make sure this child feels loved. You have their whole life and you are juggling having a new baby, if that is part of the situation. You're juggling having multiple kids in either scenario. And you have a lot on your plate. You're working your butt off. I think also sometimes we like initially say, well, no, I mean, it totally makes sense. It's not hard. But when you stop and think about it or feel about it, you might realize that even though it makes sense for you in your mind, you are still having feelings about it. So, the second thing that I want to say is to give yourself the space and the permission to feel those feelings, to process those feelings. If you have a coach or a therapist, that's a great place to do that. Close friends or anyone else in your life who you feel like would be able to hear you and support you and really just help you process is great. And if you don't have that, or maybe even if you do, another really helpful thing that I personally love is journaling. I always like to point out that journaling doesn't have to be your traditional physical journal with a pen. You can journal by typing. I personally use an app called Day One, which is a journaling app, but there's a ton of apps out there and you don't even need an app. You could just use a Google Doc or whatever. And I also really like what I call audio journaling, where instead of writing, where you verbally vent. So you be that friend, you be that coach for yourself. I know it sounds like it's just talking to yourself, but it really is different. It feels different when you know that it is landing somewhere and you are putting those feelings somewhere that you can come back to them later. Not that you have to come back to them later, but it's like it tells your brain it's safe to move forward because I've got it. I've got you. I've got these feelings. You don't have to actively work on holding on to them. So find a space or multiple spaces to process the feelings that come up for you about hearing your kid go through this. And maybe some of those feelings are exhaustion and worn out, and it's not fair. You have to deal with this now, in addition to dealing with juggling all the other things of parenting multiple kids. There's a lot that might be coming up for you. So give yourself the permission to process those and to feel the feelings, not just push them away or rationalize them away. And the first piece that we talked about, really understanding and knowing that it makes sense that your child is feeling this way, that piece can help as you're processing it and as you are reality testing some of your feelings about it, to help ground you in the idea that you absolutely, very validly can have a lot of prickly, hard feelings about all of this. And know that this is not your fault. This is not because you're doing something wrong. This is a very natural, very common, very understandable thing that your child is going through. And to also remind yourself that them feeling this way right now does not mean they're going to feel this way forever. So I can tell you, I don't feel that way now. And I did, of course, when I was 6. So proof in the pudding. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything about it. So this doesn't mean we're just going to like accept, well, this is what happens when kids have a new sibling or when they have any siblings, and we're just going to validate and move forward. No. The third piece is that relationship and that connection piece. And there's two things that I want to say here. One is when you can hold space for your child's feelings in the same way that we just held space for your feelings with journaling or talking to a friend or a coach or a therapist, we want to hold space for your child's feelings. So when they say, you love my brothers more than me, I would invite you to not just argue back. No, I don't. But to first spend some time really hearing what they're saying, using active listening to reflect what they're saying, to validate that it makes sense. Again, you can say it makes sense that you're feeling this way without saying you are right. So you can absolutely tell them that that's not true. But if you first really listen to how they're feeling and really hear the feeling, then your message is not only going to be internalized more in terms of your verbal message, but they are actually experiencing it. Their nervous system, their body, their whole being is feeling your love. So it's not just about saying that you love them, but it's about giving them that experience of it. And when you can have that holding space conversation, then you're really giving them that presence and that experience of it. And then the last piece that I want to say is, especially when there is a new baby or a big transition or something like that, this is where a practice like special time or really just setting aside, and I don't mean like a, take them to the amusement park for the whole day big event. Although, taking them for like an afternoon, let's go get some ice cream or go to your favorite, whatever it may be, would be beautiful and fun and amazing. So carving out time for them, but also making sure that in your day to day, you have 10 minutes, for example, where someone else has the baby or the baby is asleep and you can be present. You put the phone away and you can be present with the child that is feeling this way and really be present. Again, it doesn't take a lot. Like, I have been amazed at how powerful, especially for younger kids, you simply sitting on the floor near them while they are doing a preferred activity, while they are playing, or even watching their favorite TV show together. This is a place where we often think screens are bad, right? We black and white it, but this is a place where maybe they want to show you their favorite show, and really sitting and being with them and kind of delighting in them. This goes such a long way to them feeling that love, because you can say it over and over again with words. Of course, that's not true. I love you just as much. I love all of you, right? You can say all of that, but them experiencing it in their body, in their nervous system, in their whole being is really what's going to feed that and counter that feeling. Now, they may still say, you love my brothers more than me. But the more you can pour in that delight and presence, the more they will really feel that. Now, before I finish up, I just want to name that I know that this is a lot on your plate because you have a new baby, or at the very least, you have multiple kids. You have a lot to take care of. And I know that it can be hard to juggle all of this. So I just want to name that. I also want to remind you, you don't have to do it perfectly. And also, this is one of the things that I love to help parents with is to problem solve around how do we find ways in your unique family's life to make sure that you are able to connect and have this really beautiful relationship that you want with each of your children. So if you want help processing any of this or problem solving around how to make this happen, please reach out. My email is hello@drgilaparenting.com, and it is listed at the bottom of the show notes of every episode. So I read every email personally and I respond as quickly as I can. So this is your open invitation to please reach out if you do have any questions, and I will do what I can to support you as best I can. All right, have a great week. That's it for this episode. I am so glad you found your way here. And remember, even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. You've got this.